I'm Kelly from Culikid, and today we're going to make tuna noodle casserole. This is one of my guilty pleasure comfort food meals, and it just so happens to use a lot of pantry and freezer staples. So we're going to make that together tonight. So first thing that we do, as always, is get our ingredients and our supplies ready. So for our ingredients, we're going to use some frozen peas, butter, 1 can of tuna fish, some salt and pepper, 1 onion, 8-ounce container of mushrooms, some non-stick cooking spray, a little bit of flour, pasta, chicken stock. You could also substitute vegetable stock if you want to keep it all vegetarian, and milk and heavy cream. And we're going to use some shredded cheese. I have mild cheddar and Monterey Jack, which is just what I happen to have in my freezer. And also, if you have some fresh parsley on hand, that will go into this as well. So for our supplies, we will use this large pot to cook everything together in, a smaller pot for the pasta, and when you're cooking pasta, you'll need a colander or something on hand to drain the water out. And then once everything is all mixed together, it's going to finish off in the oven. So we have a 9x13 pan here that we'll use at the end. And the rest is pretty basic, so we're just going to grab it as we need it. We'll need things like a cutting board, a knife, and some measuring cups. So we'll just grab them as they come up in the recipe. So let's get started. Okay, so before we start cooking, we always make sure that we wash our hands, which I've already done, but if you haven't yet, then take the time to do that now. And then to get started with cooking, we are going to get our water boiling for pasta. And put it on our stove and turn our burner all the way up because we want it to boil. And now I'm going to add some salt to the water to help flavor our pasta. And then we are going to get our pan ready so that way when it's all ready to cook, it'll be good to go. So we want to spray some non-stick spray on it so it doesn't stick too much to our pan. So I'm just going to take this, hold it a few inches away, and just spray and move the whole time. And make sure that you get the edges as well. So now we just put this to the side until we're ready for it. You'll also want to preheat your oven to 375 degrees. My oven will be really loud, so I'm not going to do that now, but since it will take a little bit of time for your oven to heat up, you can do that now while you work on the rest of your recipe. Okay, so then we want to prep our veggies. So we need to dice our onions, so I'll show you how to do that. We'll start here by cutting the tips off of the onion, moving that to the side. And I also just want to point out that when you're using a knife, you want to be careful and make sure you're using it correctly. So you see I have my 2 fingers pinched here at the blade and just wrap the fingers around the handle. You don't want to hold a knife like this, although that might feel most natural at first. And this will give you much more control. And then when you're using your opposite hand to hold the vegetable or whatever you're chopping steady, you make sure that you don't have your fingers out that can get in the way of the knife. So you want to curl them in like this, which is what we call a bear claw. So make sure you're making a bear claw with your other hand and hold the veggie down so that way your fingertips are not in the way. And what we're going to do next is just cut our onion in half. And then we are going to peel off the skin. Now we're ready to dice our onions. You see I've discarded all of our skin into our little garbage bowl on the side. And we are going to use this method because this is the way to keep your cuts most consistent, as well as hopefully to minimize tears from the onion. So we're going to hold the onion down firmly but carefully and turn our knife on the side and cut some horizontal cuts into the onion. And you'll see my knife stops here. I don't go all the way through, so that's to keep this all intact until we start slicing on our third step. So We make about 2 to 3, depending on your size of your onion, cuts through it here. And then you'll turn it like this, and you're gonna make some vertical cuts. So starting at the edge of the onion, and you'll see my knife again is going to where I stopped it before, not all the way down to the root, and just slicing through. And you'll wanna do this all across the onion. And now this half of the onion is prepped for dicing, but I'm gonna do the same thing to the other side. Now that both sides are ready, all we're gonna do is take 1/2 at a time and just slice on through like this. And so you'll see as soon as you slice through that I have all of these little squares, these tiny pieces of onion coming through. And slide that off the knife and be really, really careful about that. So keep on slicing. And you'll do the same for the other side. Whew. It did make me tear a little bit still. But now we have a fully diced onion that's ready to go into our pot as soon as everything else is ready. And so I'll also might take these and save them in the freezer for stock to make a homemade vegetable or chicken stock later. So after the onion, we'll move on to the mushrooms. So first you want to get the dirt off. So I'm gonna do that by washing them. So our mushrooms are done being washed and are ready to cut, but you'll see in the meantime that our water for pasta has finished boiling. So we'll grab our pasta, and this and most boxes of pasta are usually about 1 pound, which is 16 ounces. So we just need half of that for 8 ounces of pasta. So I'm just gonna cut this open and pour in about half the bag. So you're gonna make sure that you're nice and careful and slow. So I give that a quick mix. We turn our pasta down a little bit so it doesn't boil over, and check your package for the cooking time. So this pasta takes 11 to 14 minutes to cook. So I'm gonna set a timer for 11 minutes. You're gonna go on the shorter side because it will continue to cook when it goes into the oven as well. Okay, back to our mushrooms. So now that they're washed, we can chop them. Again, we're holding our knife carefully and correctly. I find it easiest to chop mushrooms upside down like this because they're on their flat surface right here. I also use the stems. Some people might choose to take the stems out and cut them separately or not use the stems. But here we're just gonna cut them just like this. And so you just slice them. And slice means we're just cutting once. If we wanted to dice it, then we would do more cuts like we did with our onion. And you'll see I also turned it around so I can get a better grip on the side that I'm not cutting. So when you cut, you want to push down and go back and forth with your knife. And I'll do the same thing for all of these. Okay, so now we're going to measure a few more things that will go into our pot so they're ready to go after our onions and mushrooms. So the next thing to go in will be the flour. So we need a 1/4 cup of flour. So grab your 1/4 cup measuring cup and you can scoop out the flour And you want to make sure it's nice and even, so you can use your finger if it's clean, or the back of a butter knife or a fork or something like that, and just scrape off the top so that way it's nice and level. And we'll put it into this little prep bowl so it's ready. Then between the heavy cream and the milk, we need 2 cups. So I am going to start with my heavy cream, which I know I don't have a lot of left, and see how far it gets me. So I have a 1 cup measuring cup, so we'll have to do this at least, well, we'll have to do it twice for the 2 cups of milk and heavy cream. So I'm gonna pour this in and see how high we can get this up. Okay, so we just got about half a cup there. And so the rest we'll pour in with milk up to the 1 cup line. You see when you go down to eye level to double check that, but since this is cooking and not baking, we don't need it to be exactly precise, but we do want it to be nice and creamy. So we want to make sure we have enough. So the next thing that will go in will be the chicken broth, and that will be 1 cup. So I'm just gonna wait until I pour this in to measure the chicken broth and put it right into the pot. So I'm gonna have it lined up, ready to go in order for when the time comes. And actually that is our timer going off. So let's get that. And that means our pasta is done cooking. So I'm gonna give it a quick stir here to make sure it's not stuck together. And very carefully, and if you need to grab the other side of this, you wanna use an oven mitt, take this over to the sink, which has our colander already in it, and pour it right into the colander, which will drain out the water. So we'll make sure to turn that burner off and let that pasta sit so it's ready to go when we need it. Okay, so now there's still a few more things that we need to measure and prep, but we're just about ready to get started. So we're gonna take this big pot and put it on the burner and turn it on. And that gets turned on to about medium heat. And the first thing that will go in there will be butter. So we need 4 tablespoons of butter, and we have a whole stick. So a whole stick is 8 tablespoons. And this one has the numbers on here, 1 through 8, but some of them will just call each of these 1. So if you have to, then count to 4, and you can make a notch here with either your finger or a smaller knife, so you know where you're gonna cut. So just put it on the board, even with our wrapper on, because it's gonna show us where we need to. First, I'm gonna wipe off this knife. Then we're going to find our little notch and then cut through the butter, nice and easy. And that's ready to go into the pot. And this can go back into the fridge because we don't need it. Then while our pot is still heating up, we are going to measure our peas. We need 1 cup of peas. So my 1 cup measuring cup. But it doesn't have to be exact. And if you don't have peas, you could also add something else. If you had frozen green beans, for example, that would be good. You can either pour or scoop. I've got almost a full cup here. And we'll pour it into our bowl. So next we'll do our cheese. We need 2 cups altogether, but we just need 1 cup to get mixed into our mixture. So we will open up our bag and measure about 1 cup. And the other 1 cup will be put on top of our casserole at the end before it goes into the oven. And so, like I said, this isn't the normal cheese that I use. I sometimes use Gruyere or Gouda. A smoked Gouda is really good. But this is what I have on hand. So you can try out whatever you have on hand or whatever flavors you like. So that cheese is ready. And the last thing that we'll do is get our tuna ready. So we have our can here. And we just need our can opener. And once it goes all the way around, the can is open, and you'll see there's some water in there. I'm just moving my pasta over so I don't get this on the pasta that's sitting in the sink. And I'm going to just squeeze the tuna can over the sink to get out all of that liquid. And I'm taking this lid out very carefully because actually once that this metal is cut, it can become very sharp. So you want to be careful with where you grip it and that you don't cut your fingers. Put this off to the side. And our tuna is ready. And so we're ready to put everything together. Okay, so now that we're ready to start cooking, you'll also want to make sure that you have these two utensils on hand. So you want to have a wooden spoon or another spoon for mixing everything together. And you'll also need a whisk at some point to whisk in the flour. So to get started, let's start with our butter. So we cut it in the wrapper. So we just want to make sure that we take that off and that we don't get any wrapper into our food. And put in the butter. And you'll hear from that sizzle that our pan is really nice and hot. And I'm just moving around the pan to move the butter around to coat the entire bottom. And I'll use my spoon a little bit as well and just mix this around. Okay, so I'm ready to add my onions. So luckily everything is nice and prepped. So just pour this in. So you want to cook the onions for a bit on their own until they become a little translucent or clearer in color. And so we'll do that for about 5 minutes and then we'll be ready to add our mushrooms. So keep stirring and keeping an eye on those in the meantime. So at this point it's been about 4 to 5 minutes and our onions are looking clearer, as you can see. So we are going to add our mushrooms and just pour all of those in and give it a good mix. And so you'll want those to cook down as well, and they'll start to look softer and change color and release some of the liquid in them. So as you're waiting for them to cook, just keep giving them a stir. You want to make sure that all of your mushrooms get to touch the bottom of the pan and that none of them are sitting on top of each other, not getting cooked. Okay, so our mushrooms are still cooking, but at this point we're going to add a little bit of salt to them. So we grab our salt and pepper and just sprinkle it in. There's no need to measure, just give it a little flavor. And we'll taste it all later as well to see if we think it needs any more. A little bit of sprinkle with the pepper. And give it a good mix again. Okay, so our mushrooms are looking pretty cooked. There's lots of liquid in the pot and they're definitely softer and have changed color. So we are ready for our next step, which is to add the flour. So we're going to take this and just sprinkle it right over our mushrooms and onions. And grab your whisk this time and give everything a good mix with that whisk until it's all combined. And you'll see everything kind of clumps together. That's okay. Just shake it out of the whisk, bang it against the side, and keep mixing. Okay, so you see everything's kind of clumped together with the flour there. We're cooking it for about a minute or so, and we're getting ready to whisk in our heavy cream. Okay, so the first pour, you want to make sure that you're whisking constantly. You want to whisk the whole time, but you'll have to take some pauses. So you have to make sure that with this hand, you're moving the whisk around in a circle in the pan. And with this hand, you're slowly pouring in the liquid. So we're starting with our milk and our heavy cream and giving it a good mix right where the milk is hitting the pan. And whisk that all together. And I'm just gonna make sure that this whole pot has a good mix to it as I splash milk everywhere. And then I'm gonna add my next cup of cream. Still whisking, so you wanna be going in a circle, still and slowly pouring in your milk and heavy cream. And so like I said, after the heavy cream comes the chicken stock. So I'm gonna give this a nice good shake, and we're going to measure it to the 1 cup line. And same thing, mixing with one hand and pouring with the other. And now we're ready to add our peas. So we take our bowl of pre-measured peas and just pour those in. And you can go back to your wooden spoon, give it a nice mix. And now we want to just see this come to a little bit of a bubble. So I'm going to actually turn it up just a tiny bit, my burner, to increase the heat and get this to a low simmer. And in the meantime, just clean up our station a little bit, tidy up, so we're ready for our next steps. Okay, so our mixture is ready for our next steps, and you can tell because it has a little bit of bubbles forming. Not sure if I can show you what it looks like on the inside without spilling, but you have a little bit of bubbles. You don't want it to come to a boil, and when you mix it, you feel that it has thickened from the flour thickening up the sauce, and it doesn't feel like you're just mixing water or milk. So after that is ready, we can turn this down and add our pasta, tuna, and cheese. So start by adding our pasta and give it a mix to incorporate it. I also mentioned in the beginning that you can add fresh parsley here, which I didn't have, but I have frozen cubes of parsley, so I'm going to add 2 tablespoons worth of that in here now. If you had fresh parsley, you just dice up 2 tablespoons and put that in at this point. So here are my little cubes that I made with water, just a little bit of water, the chopped up parsley, and a nice cube tray. So put those in, mix them around to get them to melt. And now we'll add our tuna. So we just take a fork and just scoop out this tuna. I'm actually gonna break some of it up before I start scooping it in there. Again, mix everything together. And can you see how everything looks coming together just about? Our parsley still needs to get broken down a little bit here. And we're gonna add our cheese, and that's really gonna thicken it up and help it all stick together. Okay, and mix one more time. Okay, this is starting to look really good. You can see as we mix it, we got all the gooiness from the cheese. Everything is mixed evenly. There's no clumps of everything all together. And that means we're ready to put it in our casserole dish. So we already greased this, so it's nice and ready. And this pot is going to be heavy, so what you're going to do is, if you have somebody helping you, that's great. Otherwise, you can just take the handles and just pour it into this until a lot of it empties out, and then use the spoon to scrape it. So we'll pick up both these handles, being really careful that we're not touching the very hot part of the pot. Okay, and you can see we're almost down to the end. Let me scoop this in here. And we're going to turn off our burner. And just take your spoon and mix this around so that way it's even. You can see right now that there's just like some dry noodles almost over here, and it's really soupy over here. So just make this all nice and even. Okay, so now the oven is preheated, so we're almost ready to go in. First though, I have to tell you that I need a cardinal cooking sin, and I didn't taste it before I put it in here. So you really should, as the last step on the stove, taste it and add more salt and pepper to your liking. So I actually did that while it was in this pan and gave it a little mix in here. So now it's seasoned. Now we're going to add our last cup of cheese. So it should be about a cup, but I can see that this is like kind of a cup, and it's really what you like. So I'm just going to not measure this and just take it and sprinkle it right on top. Nice and even over the entire casserole. And I was also forgetful in the beginning in telling you about a very important ingredient, which is potato chips. So you want to add some potato chips on top of this for some crunch, and you can choose to put it in before you put it in the oven, in which case you just take a handful, crush them in your hands, and put them on top so it's covering the whole thing. Put it in the oven. So I'm going to actually top each individual plate with chips instead, so I'm going to skip this for now. So it's ready to go in the oven, so we're going to put on our oven mitts, so we're nice and careful. Open up our oven door down here, nice and loud oven here, and put our casserole in. So the casserole goes in for about 20 minutes, so you're going to set a timer. 20, start, and we'll check back when our timer goes off. Okay, so our timer just went off. So we'll get some oven mitts and take our casserole out of the oven very carefully. Perfect. And turn the oven off. And so we'll just let this sit for a little while to cool a little bit. You see it's bubbling around the edges, so that means we're all set. And in the meantime, we're going to get our bowls ready. And our chips to go on top. So we're going to use some sour cream onion glaze for this. And we have a spoon to scoop it. So, I'm going to use my oven mitt again because this will still be quite hot. And hold the pan with one hand and scoop with the other. Now we're ready to top with our chips. So we'll just grab a small handful and touch them in our hands, sprinkle it on top. You're ready to enjoy your tuna casserole. Enjoy!